From sketching buildings in school notebooks to earning my architecture degree, I've always been passionate about design. My dream was to create inspiring spaces. I met Sally along the way, and she shared my vision. Together, we established a thriving architectural firm. My closest friend David joined us and became essential to our success, managing projects and ensuring my designs were flawlessly executed. Everything appeared perfect. Then one afternoon, while reviewing a project, a news report about a liquidation in Ocala caught my attention. To my utter disbelief, the footage showed Sally and David exiting a motel room together. Sally had left work early, claiming errands, while David had said he was in Gainesville. The betrayal was devastating. 14 years of marriage and a decade of friendship were suddenly in question. Our firm had experienced rapid growth, particularly after winning a City Hall Design Award. We'd expanded to a team of 12 architects, moved into a new 7-story building, and enjoyed consistent profits from leased office space. I'd invested the most, followed by Sally and David. Things were going exceptionally well until that afternoon. The distance between Sally and me had increased over the years due to my demanding work schedule, but I never questioned her love or fidelity. However, the motel footage ignited deep suspicion. I contacted my friend George at the TV station and requested a copy of the broadcast. Reviewing it confirmed my fears. Sally and David were clearly seen kissing at the motel. I reached out to Tom Noble, the motel owner, to examine the surveillance footage. He informed me the police had already confiscated the tapes, but I could view them at the station. I immediately arranged a viewing, bracing myself for the potential revelations. Shutting down my computer, I informed my secretary I was leaving early and asked her to notify security once everyone was gone. Watching the surveillance video, I saw David arrive at the motel first, retrieve the key, and enter room 116. Sally arrived minutes later and followed him inside. After a while, a man with a weapon ran past their room, pursued by the police. Then, all was quiet until the news crew arrived. The footage showed Sally and David kissing before leaving the room. I questioned the motel clerk, asking if he recognized them. "Sure, they come here every week, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson," he replied. "They've been regulars for 2 years." I obtained a copy of the video and drove home, formulating a plan. I couldn't let them know I was aware of their affair just yet. I needed time to strategize, especially if they were embezzling from the company. I decided a forensic audit was necessary. Fortunately, we were scheduled to attend the Southeastern Architects Association meeting in a week, which would provide me with the opportunity to investigate. With my secretary, Marge, on maternity leave, I considered Debbie, her replacement. She was intelligent, competent, and had even suggested establishing a child care facility in the office building, an idea both Sally and David supported. I needed to speak with Debbie further and involve her in my plan. Despite everything, I still struggled to believe Sally and David were betraying me. Sally was always affectionate, expressing her love numerous times a day. David, too, seemed devoted to his wife, Mary. I had to act convincingly at dinner that evening to avoid arousing suspicion. Dinner proceeded smoothly, although Mary mentioned the liquidation at the Nobility Motel. Sally flinched, but David remained composed, asking if it was the property we'd previously worked on. I suspected Mary was aware of the affair and subtly provoking them. I had to maintain my composure. After dinner, while cleaning up, Sally washed dishes and David dried, while Mary and I brought items in from the patio. As we entered, Sally and David were conversing quietly. Mary joked, "What are you two planning, sneaking off once JN and I are asleep?" They both startled, and Sally laughed, joking that sneaking around was the only way they got any intimacy, adding that David was too afraid of being caught by Mary. We all laughed, but I couldn't shake my unease. Once Mary and David departed, I asked Sally if something was going on. She looked at me with her usual affection, denying anything was amiss, saying she loved me and was ready to start trying for a baby. I was torn between what I felt and what I saw. I couldn't decipher the truth. I went upstairs and she was already waiting for me, behaving as if nothing had changed. But the guilt and confusion overwhelmed me, and I became physically ill. Sally tried to comfort me, but I couldn't bear to look at her. I quickly dressed, grabbed my keys, and left the house, unsure of my destination. I eventually stopped at a cafe, needing time to think. My phone rang. It was Sally, but I ignored it and ordered coffee, lost in thought. I wondered how I hadn't noticed the signs of my marriage crumbling. As I sat there, Debbie, my new assistant, saw me and offered to listen. She shared that she'd experienced difficult times with her own family and understood challenging situations. I hesitated, but eventually confided in her about Sally's affair with David, expressing my disbelief, especially given how frequently Sally professed her love. Debbie, still holding my hand, suggested Sally might have a similar issue to her sister, who loved her husband but couldn't resist infidelity. Her sister's situation ended in divorce and illness. Debbie reassured me that people can change, but emphasized the importance of getting answers. Did Sally love David? How long had the affair been going on? Why hadn't it stopped? Debbie recommended I get a detailed summary of Sally's phone records, suggesting it might provide further clarity. Impressed by her astuteness, I decided to trust her, especially since she already knew most of the story. "I'll pay you to help me gather the information I need," I offered. She laughed. "I'll help you, but I don't want your money. Friends don't charge friends." "All right, friend," I agreed. "But call me John outside of work. We'll keep things professional at the office." I asked her to find a private investigator and a forensic accountant. I explained that Sally, Dave, and I would be at a conference in Atlanta for a few days, providing details of when and where Sally and Dave typically met, suggesting hidden cameras might be beneficial. Debbie smiled. "I might need some cash for a babysitter." "Use the card," I said, handing her a company credit card. "You can withdraw up to $300. The limit is $10,000, and I'll give you the PIN. I won't forget what you're doing for me." "I take care of my friends," I told her. She smiled softly. "I trust you completely." A weight lifted off my chest as I looked at her. She was truly remarkable. I began to wonder if the problems with my wife were partly my fault. I needed more information to determine if our marriage was salvageable. Debbie then shared more about her background. Her father, a police officer, had been tragically killed in the line of duty. Afterward, she moved in with her strict uncle. Her sister rebelled and disappeared, returning years later with a husband and child. Debbie, meanwhile, graduated as valedictorian and quickly climbed the ranks at a department store, becoming a manager at just 18. However, an assault at a work party left her pregnant and unemployed. Despite her hardships, she persevered, raising her daughter alone. I admired her resilience. "If you ever need anything, just let me know," I offered. "I'm studying business administration," she said, "but tuition is tough, and my savings are running low." "Sweetie, I have a proposition for you," I said, offering to pay for her college education in exchange for a contract to work for me during and after her studies. I explained her salary would increase with her GPA. Her face lit up. "Wow. I won't disappoint you, John. Just don't call me Mr. outside of work." As she left, she gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, a tear rolling down her face. After she left, I noticed her bill was only $2.50, so I'd covered both of ours. The next morning, I heard Debbie's heels clicking down the hall. She paused at my office door with a bright smile. "Good morning, boss." "Good morning, Debbie. Come on in." She placed 3 $1 bills on my desk and grinned. "I stopped by the cafe this morning to pay for last night, but they said the check was already paid. You must have covered mine." I chuckled. "Yeah, I did, but it was only $2.50. You tipped too, didn't you?" "Yeah, I guess I did," she admitted. I handed her an envelope. "Here's the credit card. The PIN is inside. Start on those projects we discussed. I'll tell Marge you're working on the daycare plan, so you can take your time. Sound good?" She smiled, taking the envelope. "Yes, sir, John. I'll report back later if I'm done before the day is over." By noon, Debbie returned with an envelope. "Here's everything you requested. Let me know if it works for the audit. I need to confirm by tomorrow for this weekend. I'll also need to bring my daughter Dolly with me for the surveillance setup." "Should I come back in an hour?" she asked. I assured her I'd have answers soon and smiled as she left. Then, I buzzed Sally. "Hi, honey. What's going on?" "Not much," Sally answered. "You didn't go out for lunch?" I asked. "No, too busy. I'm getting payroll ready early since we're leaving for Atlanta on Friday. Is everything set with Dave and Mary?" "Yep. Are you feeling better today?" "You seemed off last night." "Yeah, I'm good now. By the way, that girl, Debbie, dropped off some daycare info. She's sharp," I mentioned. Sally teased. "She sure is. Should I be worried about her around you?" I laughed. "Why? You've never worried before. Besides, she's way too young. If I were 20 years younger, though, maybe." Sally laughed too. "She's a cutie, that's for sure. And her daughter is even cuter." That comment struck a nerve, as I wanted a baby too. Later that afternoon, Dave stopped by. "Are you ready for Atlanta?" I asked. "Heck yeah," Dave replied, then added, "Sally told me you weren't feeling well last night. You all right?" "Yeah, just something I ate," I replied with a grin, as if I could ever cheat on Sally. She'd liquidate me. Dave chuckled but seemed slightly uncomfortable. "She loves you. She'd never cheat." "Maybe," I countered, "but under the right conditions, anyone might. She has plenty of admirers." "True," Dave agreed, "but she's yours." The conference went well, though I was anxious. I called Debbie, or Dee, as I now referred to her, and she confirmed she had all the information I needed. Sally and I were busy with conference activities, and though exhausted, we had a good time. After the last day's events, we returned home Sunday evening. While sitting in the back seat with Mary, I noticed Sally repeatedly pushing Dave's hands away while she drove. She glanced back at us, but I pretended to be asleep under my cap. After a moment, I saw her signal to Dave, who turned around to check on us. When I closed my eyes and reopened them, Dave was sitting closer to Sally, and I could hear her softly moaning. I sat up and asked, "Where are we now?" They both jumped. Sally replied, "We just entered Florida. We're looking for a pit stop so Dave can take over driving." At that moment, I knew my marriage was over. The rest of the drive was quiet. After stopping for fast food, we returned home, unloaded the car, and Sally snuggled up and quickly fell asleep, but I couldn't. After lying awake for an hour, I called Debbie, who answered immediately. "How did things go?" I asked. "Smoothly," she replied, "but I suspect tomorrow will be chaotic." I asked her to leave everything in my desk drawer, thanked her, and hung up. Monday started like any other. I left for work before Sally woke up, and Dave arrived shortly after me. I doubted he could have stopped by to see Sally without being noticeably late. The accounting report was mostly clean, except Dave was misusing his expense account by a couple $100 a month. Nothing major, but it set a bad example. Then I heard Debbie's heels down the hall. She smiled as she poked her head into my office, making the day feel a little brighter. "Hello, boss. How are you today?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet. I haven't read the investigator's report. Did you?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I pulled out the report and quickly skimmed through it. My suspicions were confirmed. There was overwhelming evidence. I inserted the DVD and watched the footage. It started with Sally entering the motel room and kissing Dave. They undressed and had sex. I fast-forwarded to the next scene, which was from Thursday. In the video, Sally told Dave, "This is the end. I think we've been too careless. They both suspect something. We can't do this again." Dave agreed, saying it had been a wonderful 5 years. He joked about one last time, but Sally refused, saying she couldn't lose me. They kissed and left. Tears filled my eyes. Debbie shut the door and rushed to my side. "John, are you okay?" she asked. "They're supposed to meet you here in 20 minutes. Do you want me to delay it?" "No," I said. "Give me a minute to wash my face. When is Mrs. Forrester expected?" 5 or 10 minutes after Sally and Dave arrive. "Can you stall until then?" "Buzz me when she gets here and escort her in. Stay as a witness. You control the hidden cameras, right?" "Yes, I'll turn them on when they arrive." "Good. The faster Mrs. Forrester comes in, the better." Debbie smiled. "You'll do just fine, Mr. Nelson." I guess you noticed the tissues I put around the room. She glanced at the clock. I need to get back to my desk. She peeked outside, then blew me a kiss. Be strong, boss. The door closed behind her. 2 minutes later, the buzzer rang, and Dave and Sally entered. I pretended to be on a call, motioning for them to sit. Right, George. I'll let you know how it goes. By then, the buzzer went off again. Debbie announced, Mrs. Forrester is here. I welcomed Mary in and said, Mary, I thought you should be here since this affects you too. Sally and Dave exchanged nervous glances. I introduced Debbie as my temporary secretary and asked everyone to watch the TV monitor. I played the video of Sally meeting Dave at the motel. Sally screamed, No! And collapsed onto the floor. Dave glared at me, saying, You son of a... Mary interrupted. No, you're the son of a bitch, David. Be quiet. I want to hear this. After more footage, I stopped the video and turned to Mary. You need to see one more part. I showed the clip where Sally and Dave agreed to end the affair, fearing they'd been caught. Sally was still crying on the floor. I said firmly, Enough, Sally. It's too late. You need to hear this. It's about your future. I turned off the DVD and said, Sally, I will always love you, but I can never trust or live with you again. You'll be served with divorce papers as you leave. I looked at Mary. I'm sorry to drop this on you, but I think you had an idea this was happening, didn't you? Mary nodded. Yes, I did. I smelled Sally's perfume on Dave and knew something was off. I forgive you, John. I've already lined up a lawyer for this. I turned to Sally and Dave. Cheating is like stealing. Our wedding vows mean forsaking all others, and you both broke that trust. In business, trust is everything. I propose buying you both out, but I'll need time to gather the cash. If not, we sell the business and split the profits. We'll decide in 10 days. Any comments? Mary spoke first. The money Dave invested is mine. I'd like to stay as a silent partner. Dave's fired and has no home now. I smiled. That makes things easier. I'll get the paperwork drawn up. Sally then asked, John, can I keep my share and be a silent partner too? Just send me the dividends? Mary, I'm so sorry, Sally sobbed. I never meant for this. I was weak and threw away the best man in the world. My life is over. I sighed. Sally, you can keep the house. I'll move out soon. Sally left, and I heard her being served divorce papers as her heels clicked down the hall. I turned to the window, tears in my eyes. After a few minutes, Debbie gently pulled on my arm and dabbed at my eyes with a tissue. Mr. John, are you all right? I smiled. It's hard to end 14 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage, but I'm relieved I can keep the business. Debbie smiled. I'm happy for both of us. Now you can keep your promise. I would have kept it somehow. How's the daycare project coming along? Debbie smiled, and the tension I'd been feeling vanished. I finalized all the figures and even found a retired nurse who'd love to run the daycare. She knows other RNs who would be interested in working part-time or full-time. I'd like to bring her in. That's your call. If she's a good fit, send her to Joanne in HR. Do you still have money left on the credit card? Yes, more than half. Good. Use it to buy the equipment she needs. If the room requires modifications, arrange a meeting with all department heads, including Sally and Dave's assistants, right after noon in the conference room. I smiled and said, I'm putting a lot on your plate. Can you handle it? Yes, I can. I'll only ask for help if necessary. Great. From now on, set up a daily morning meeting with me. Also, you're now my personal assistant. Find a secretary for yourself and give yourself a raise. She beamed, hugged me, and kissed my lips before pulling back, embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I got excited. I laughed. Thank you for the kiss. I might have to promote you daily. She blushed. Seriously, I hope it's for more than just my kisses. Don't worry, I reassured her. I trust you'll do a great job. You'll be my eyes and ears, helping me run the business. Promoting Debbie was the best decision I'd made. She handled everything efficiently, freeing me to focus on what mattered. The daycare was set up in no time. A couple of weeks later, she walked into my office for our morning meeting, looking professional in a new business suit. "Good morning, boss," Debbie said cheerfully. "Good morning, Deb. How are you?" I asked, grinning. "Much better now that I'm here. Thank you." "Now meet my new assistant," Debbie said, pressing the intercom button. A small girl bounced into the room. "Here I am, Mommy," the girl exclaimed with excitement. Debbie smiled and introduced her. "This is my daughter, Dolly. Say good morning like I taught you." Dolly curtsied sweetly. "Good morning, Mr. John. I'm pleased to meet you." Grinning, I replied, "Good morning, Miss Dolly. Are you enjoying the daycare?" "Oh, yes. It's fun. And Mommy visits me lots," she said with a bright smile. I couldn't help but ask, "Dolly, have you ever been to the zoo?" Dolly looked up at Debbie, then back at me. "No. Where the animals are?" she asked innocently. I smiled at Debbie and turned to Dolly. "Well, I'd love to take you and your mommy to the zoo this Sunday, if you'd like." Dolly's eyes lit up, and she excitedly asked her mom, "Mommy, can we go?" Realizing I'd spoken out of turn, I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Deb. I should have asked you first. Please forgive me." Debbie smiled warmly. "It's okay. You just got caught up in the moment. Yes, we'd love to go. I'll pack a picnic." "Debbie, do you have a car?" I asked, noticing the slight hesitation in her response. "No, mine broke down, and I'm saving up for one," she explained. "As my personal assistant, you need a company car. I'll arrange everything this afternoon after lunch. With you and Dolly," I offered. Sunday at the zoo was wonderful. Dolly was thrilled, and I ended up carrying her for most of the day. Spending time with a child was more special than I'd imagined, and I enjoyed Debbie's company too. The next day I arranged for a company car, a 2-year-old Honda Odyssey. I instructed our transportation chief to clean it up and park it in Dave's old spot, now reserved for Debbie. That afternoon, Debbie stopped by my office with Dolly, letting me know they were heading home. I playfully stuck out my lip in a pretend pout. Dolly's eyes widened as she tugged at her mom. "Mr. J.N. is crying, Ma." Debbie and Dolly both asked, "What's wrong?" I smiled and replied, "Dolly didn't kiss me goodbye." Dolly giggled and ran over, arms outstretched. I lifted her, laughing, and after she gave me a sweet kiss, I set her down. Then I handed Debbie a set of car keys. She looked at them, puzzled. "You look so professional in your new suit, and you can't be seen riding the bus. These are the keys to your company car, parked in your new reserved spot," I said. Debbie's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Really?" "Yep. If you don't have a child seat for Dolly, get one." "No, go on," I added with a grin. Debbie hesitated for a moment, then shook her head, scooped up Dolly, and left. The next morning I saw her pull into the lot in the Honda minivan. When she noticed the coffee on her desk, she smiled, walked into my office, and quietly closed the door behind her. Without a word, she hugged me tightly and kissed me deeply before pulling back and asking, "Why are you so good to me?" I smiled at her. "Because you've earned it. The company runs smoother than ever, and honestly, being around you makes me happy." She looked up at me, searching my face. "Is that really true?" "Of course. You know I don't lie," I reassured her. "John," she started hesitantly, "I need your help. I bought steaks and a grill, but I have no idea how to cook them. Can you show me tonight?" "Sure, I'd love to," I agreed. She hesitated again, then added, "And Dolly's been begging to have you over for dinner. She really likes you." "And well, so do I." She blushed slightly. I smiled warmly. "About the minivan, though, I can't accept it." Her brow furrowed. "You don't like it? We love it, but it's too much." "It's been sitting unused for a year. If you really don't want it, I'll get you something else," I offered. She laughed, shaking her head. Okay, I'll keep it. You sure know how to get your way." I chuckled. Hey, you're the one who convinced me to set up a daycare. You're good at getting things done. Just don't be mad at me, she said softly. I'm not mad. That's why I hired you. To push me to do what's needed. You keep everything running smoothly. She giggled, clearly relieved. It works, doesn't it? I grinned. What time should I come over for dinner? How about right after you change? Oh, and the grill is still in the van, she reminded me. I'll be there soon, I promised. Dinner that night was perfect. Steaks, baked potatoes, and corn on the cob, all cooked on the grill. Afterward, Dolly and I played Go Fish, and later we treated ourselves to ice cream at Dairy Queen. It was a fun, messy evening. And after helping put Dolly to bed, Debbie and I shared a quiet glass of wine. Can I see you tomorrow? I asked, sensing something in the air. Debbie hesitated, then said, John, we need to talk. A chill ran down my spine. I'm listening, I replied, worried I'd overstepped. You always listen, but you're not hearing me, she said gently. I think I need to release you from your promise and find another job. My heart sank. Why? I thought you loved your job. I do, she admitted, but I feel like I owe you so much, and I don't know how to repay you. I shook my head. You don't owe me anything, Deb. I've gained far more from you than you've given. She looked at me, clearly confused. How is that possible? I haven't given you anything. You've given me the most precious gift of all, time with you and Dolly. Your kindness has saved me. If I weren't so much older, I'd court you with everything I've got. I paused, realizing the weight of what I'd just said. I probably shouldn't have said that. Her eyes softened as she looked at me intently. Are you telling me you love me but won't pursue me because of your age? Yes, I whispered. I love you with all my heart. As I poured my heart out, Debbie's face lit up with a big smile. She jumped into my lap and kissed me passionately, then showered my face with kisses. John, I love you too. Dolly loves you so much. I want you tonight, and I want to wake up with you in my bed. To teach me about sex, she exclaimed. I smiled as she kissed me again. I don't know much about sex, she admitted, but you're the sexiest man I've ever met. I fell in love with you the day I started working for you. She caressed my face, speaking softly. I meet lots of guys at school, but they're so immature. You're different, and I love that about you. I kissed her gently, then carried her to bed, where we cuddled. John, I love this peaceful feeling after being close to you, she said, giggling. I hope you can dance as well as you love. Dance? Yes, I love dancing. I used to teach at Arthur Murray. I always dreamed of marrying a tall, strong, handsome man who danced with me into the sunset. Well, 3 out of 4 isn't bad, I joked. She smiled. Honestly, I'll skip the dancing for your love. I can't live without that. As I thought about what we needed to arrange, marriage license, honeymoon, where we'd live, Debbie grinned knowingly. You're thinking about a solution, aren't you? I can help. I told her my thoughts, and she smiled. Don't worry. I have it all planned. Go back to sleep. I tried to relax, but my mind was racing. She snuggled up to me, and with a soft smile whispered, I love you so much. We can solve any problem together. I never want to sleep without you again. Do you have room for Dolly and me at your place? Yes. I live in a 3-bedroom condo. We can move you in today. She kissed my cheek and said, Problem solved. Now I need to brush my teeth for a real kiss. When she returned, wrapped in a towel, she grabbed a small notebook and slid back into bed. She flipped through it and showed me a page titled Marriage Information, which listed everything we needed to know, addresses, phone numbers, and even things like banking and insurance. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since I first met you, she giggled. I couldn't sleep last night, so I got up and made the list. Give in to your urges, I teased. I love it. Everything went smoothly. We got married in my office that Monday, with Debbie, Dolly, a notary, and a few witnesses. Dolly was thrilled, wanting me to hold her constantly, and Debbie held my other arm. I couldn't have been happier. Debbie also trained a young man, Jeff, to take over her day-to-day tasks. He was athletic and about 30, which made me a bit uneasy, but I said nothing. The next morning, I noticed Debbie spending a lot of time with Jeff. I visited Joanne in the secretarial pool and asked for a new assistant. She smiled knowingly and said, "I've got just the right person. She'll be in your office tomorrow, ready to help." That afternoon, I went to check on some new wall section drawings for a building I was designing. When I returned to my office near closing time, I found Debbie showing Jeff how the intercom system worked. Carrying Dolly, I said, "Hi, Debbie. Dolly and I are ready to go. We'll be waiting in the atrium." Debbie quickly grabbed her jacket, looking adorable in her outfit. She had lost weight and was looking great. I decided she needed a shopping spree. As we headed out, she asked where we were going, but I told her she'd find out soon. When we arrived at a high-end department store, her eyes widened. We got Dolly settled in her stroller, and a shopping assistant named Jane greeted us. I explained that my wife needed a new wardrobe, including business attire, casual clothes, and lingerie, and handed Jane a budget of $5,000. Debbie protested, "Don't I get a say in this?" I smiled. "You pick what you like, and I'll tell you if I like it. But you're getting a new wardrobe. Tomorrow's Dolly's turn." The assistant grinned and led Debbie away. After 2 hours, I was dozing off with Dolly asleep in my arms when Debbie kissed me awake. "We're done for now, and we'll return tomorrow. I got so much for under $2,500. Back home, we unloaded 4 loads of boxes into Debbie's dressing room, and I helped unpack. We ordered Chinese for dinner, and Dolly loved the fortune cookies. When she handed me one, I read, "Your daddy will take you shopping for dresses tomorrow." Dolly's eyes lit up. "Is that for me?" she asked excitedly. The next day, both Debbie and Dolly got lots of new clothes. That evening, Debbie showed me her favorite shopping site, and I let her spend an additional $1,000 on summer outfits. She looked amazing in everything she modeled, and her happiness made it all worthwhile. After Dolly went to bed, I pulled Debbie into my lap, and we kissed. "Maybe it's time to call your mom and tell her about us," I suggested. Debbie thought for a moment, then agreed. She called her mom, reconnecting after 3 years, and shared the news about Dolly and our marriage. They spoke for over an hour. After the call, Debbie, with fresh tears in her eyes, jumped into my lap and kissed me passionately. "Thank you, John. That was the right thing to do. Mom and Uncle Bill were so happy. They want us to visit soon." "Where do they live, Viti?" I asked. "Melrose, Florida. Less than an hour away." I smiled. "How about we visit on Sunday?" She agreed. After putting Dolly to bed, I went to kiss her goodnight. As I approached Dolly's door, I overheard Debbie softly praying with her, asking God to bless their loved ones and keep them safe. Dolly added, "And Daddy too." Debbie smiled. "Yes, sweetie, Daddy most of all. We love him the most." I entered and hugged both of them. Dolly reached for me, and I picked her up, hugging and kissing her. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetie. Sleep well." Tears filled my eyes as she said, "I love Mommy and Daddy as much as I can." She was so sweet, and I loved my girls deeply. The next morning, while I made breakfast, Debbie called her mom. She smiled as she told me, "We're all set for Sunday." On Saturday, our shopping trip was focused on finding outfits for the visit. Both Debbie and Dolly picked matching denim skirts, black turtlenecks, and denim jackets. Dolly wore tights and boots, while Debbie opted for leggings and heeled boots. They both looked adorable. I wore jeans, a blue shirt, and a navy blazer. Debbie guided me to her family's large home. As we pulled up, her mother and Uncle William greeted us warmly. While Debbie and her mom embraced, I introduced myself to Uncle William and introduced Dolly, who curtsied sweetly. Uncle William, with tears in his eyes, picked Dolly up to introduce her to her grandmother. But when her grandmother reached out, Dolly clung to me, scared. I quietly reassured her, explaining that her mom's tears when talking about her mother were from missing her, not fear. Slowly, Dolly felt reassured and allowed her grandmother to hug her, breaking the tension. We moved inside, and Dolly quickly warmed up to her grandmother. Debbie smiled at me, love in her eyes. Uncle William and I started talking, and he recognized me from a past business meeting. We ended up chatting about work, and he admitted his regret over pushing Debbie to have an abortion, calling it his biggest mistake. I laughed and told him, "Debbie is a determined, intelligent woman. She's turned my business around in just a few months. Production and profits are up, and everyone loves working with her." As the afternoon progressed, Granny asked if Dolly could stay with her for a few days, but Debbie and I agreed she was still too young. Truthfully, I wasn't ready to let her go just yet. Dolly spent half her time in daycare and the other half with us, becoming a beloved presence at the office. Debbie was an active manager, visiting every office daily, always asking questions and expecting solutions. Her smile lit up the office, and her praise was cherished by everyone. But a frown from her was deeply felt. One day, Debbie noticed the new secretary at her old desk and entered my office frowning. She asked, "How's the new girl working out?" "She's fine," I joked, "but she doesn't kiss as well as you." Debbie teared up, and I quickly reassured her, "I'm just teasing. You and Dolly have all my kisses forever." Her smile returned, and she playfully asked, "What about hugs?" "Those too," I laughed. "That might change," she teased, hinting at future babies. Later, I saw Jeff checking out Debbie while she worked, and it bothered me. Later that day, I overheard Jeff in the restroom bragging to a coworker about his intentions to pursue Debbie. Furious, I called Debbie into my office and asked her to fire Jeff. She was surprised, but didn't argue. A few hours later, Debbie confirmed she had fired him, and we headed home together. On the way home, Debbie asked, "Aren't you going to ask if I fired Jeff?" I smiled. "Why wouldn't you?" She explained that one of the workers told her Jeff was spreading rumors about them. "Good call," I said, suggesting we promote the worker who gave her the tip. That night, as we prepared for dinner, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jeff pointing a gun at me. He demanded to see his daughter, claiming Dolly was his. Debbie calmly corrected him, saying he was mistaken, and explained that Dolly wasn't his child. Jeff, confused, realized he had mixed Debbie up with someone else. As Jeff's attention shifted entirely to Debbie, I saw my chance. I quickly punched him in the head, and he dropped the weapon, hitting the floor. I grabbed the revolver just as Debbie rushed over and kicked him hard in the groin, screaming at him. She continued kicking him in the head and face, yelling until a deputy arrived and pulled her back. Soon, several deputies were in the apartment. Jeff was handcuffed, and we learned that the pizza delivery guy had seen Jeff with the weapon and called the police. After checking on Dolly, who was sound asleep, we gave statements. Jeff was charged with assault and several other crimes. Afterward, we sat down to eat but barely touched our food, mostly holding each other. Debbie, still in shock, said, "I don't even remember seeing him before he worked for us." I suggested she might have blocked the memory to avoid reliving the trauma of her past attack. She nodded, unsure, if she had ever seen his face clearly. Then she noticed my swollen hand. "We need to get ice on that," she said, bringing a bowl to help. She complimented me on how I'd handled Jeff, distracting him. I joked about how ballet slippers were a better choice than stilettos. Otherwise, she might have done real damage. Debbie got serious, saying, "No one threatens my family and walks away unscathed." That night, I suggested we both get concealed weapon permits and look into self-defense training. Debbie knew of a place near Melrose for martial arts training and said she would set it up. The next morning, after a restless night with my hand bandaged, Debbie mentioned she had already signed us up for a weapons safety course at a local shop. She surprised me by sharing how much experience she had with firearms, thanks to her Uncle Bill, who had taught her to shoot various weapons. Later, I showed Debbie my hidden weapon locker, letting her pick one for the class. She chose a small .22 revolver, smiling and saying she used to shoot one like it. She also picked up a Walther PPK in .380, saying it reminded her of her uncle's weapon. Debbie shared an old lesson from her father. "It doesn't matter the caliber if you strike the target in the right place. A miss with a bigger weapon is still a miss." I agreed, saying accuracy is key, no matter the weapon. We left work early, dropped Dolly off at Grandma's, and headed to the martial arts center. After discussing our experience and concerns about having a toddler, the owner recommended a self-defense baton disguised as a flashlight. A quick wrist flick extended it to 21 inches. He offered a 1-hour class, which we signed up for, and we bought 2 batons. Next, we went to the weapon shop for our concealed weapons course. Debbie practiced with both weapons and preferred the Walther PPK, becoming skilled at hitting the target consistently. She bought a clip-on holster and a few stylish purses designed to hold the PPK. I chose my Smith & Wesson .40 caliber, purchasing a fanny pack holster. We picked up our study materials and left. At Grandma's, Uncle Bill showed me a homemade self-defense tool, a piece of rebar with nuts attached, and explained how it could be used for protection while looking harmless. I complimented his ingenuity. After the incident with Jeff, I upgraded our home security with hidden cameras and took Debbie to the shooting range several times. I taught her to shoot through a purse, simulating a real-life scenario where she couldn't pull the weapon out first. After some practice, she mastered it, even hitting targets from different positions and distances. Debbie became proficient at point shooting and impressed everyone at the range. She could rapid-fire 6 shots, all hitting the target. She was concerned about ruining her purse but made adjustments to use it for training. I joked that if she were in an evening gown with a tiny clutch, she'd need my protection. She replied, "I always look to you for protection. You're my hero." The weapon shop owner watched Debbie's progress and remarked on her impressive skills. We both passed our written test and received our concealed carry permits. We kept practicing at the range, with Debbie becoming extremely accurate at close range, consistently scoring well. Debbie loved stopping by the range to practice, and her shooting skills and grace on the line attracted attention. She quickly became a standout, impressing everyone, including the range master. One day, she took on a challenge to shoot at 2 targets on either side, hitting them flawlessly within 4 seconds. The range master praised her, noting that she'd learned well to keep her weapon functional during critical moments. After a few more rounds, we left, but it was clear Debbie had become an impressive shooter, admired by all. We also bought her several holster purses, including a small clutch that could eject the pistol directly into her hand when needed. Debbie often dressed in a way that turned heads, with high heels, short skirts, and sexy tops, and she knew I didn't mind others admiring her. It was fun for both of us. One afternoon, she came into my office, closed the door, and climbed into my lap. She kissed me and said, "I've stopped taking the pill, and I want us to take a week-long vacation. Mama and Uncle Bill can watch Dolly. She's comfortable with them now." I smiled and told her to plan it. Debbie excitedly shared, "We're going to Grand Cayman, staying at a clothing-optional resort." I laughed and asked about the cost. She reassured me it wasn't much, and that she was mostly packed. Our vacation was great, though our experience in the clothing-optional section didn't go as planned. After relaxing on the beach, we woke up to a small crowd watching us. A man approached, offering Debbie a role in an adult film, boasting it would make her big money. I stood up and told him, "She's a CEO making $99,000 a week. You'd have to beat that." The man was stunned. Back in our room, Debbie teased me, asking if she could star in the movie. I played along but made it clear I wouldn't allow it. We laughed about it, but she admitted she couldn't do that anyway. "I'd never let another man touch me," she said seriously. We kept the conversation light, teasing each other about the bizarre encounter. However, after some playful back and forth, Debbie joked about my size compared to the guy on the beach, which stung a bit more than I expected. Needing space, I left the room and wandered the resort, lost in thought. Eventually, I overheard Debbie talking to the man from the beach. He was warning her that teasing a man about his size could have lasting damage. I listened, pained, as he explained how such remarks could ruin a relationship. Debbie cut him off, clearly worried, and hurried to find me. When she saw me sitting nearby, she ran into my arms, tears forming. We went back to our room, but I was still upset. As I undressed, she asked with concern if my frustration was because of her teasing. I sighed, admitting that her comment had hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Debbie's face crumpled with tears, trying to explain through her sobs. I gently calmed her down and told her I'd overheard the conversation with the corn guy. Her eyes were still wet as she asked again if I was okay. "I'll do my best with my inferior equipment," I joked, blending humor with vulnerability. Debbie hugged me tightly, and after that, the misunderstanding between us seemed to lift. We never saw the guy again. The rest of our honeymoon was relaxing, and we made love often. Leaving Grand Cayman was bittersweet, but we were excited to return to Dolly. When we got home, Dolly ran to us screaming, "Mommy, Daddy, I missed you." She jumped into Debbie's arms while I watched, moved by their reunion. As I gathered our gifts, Dolly shouted, "Where's Daddy?" I scooped her up, and we all hugged together, crying tears of joy. Debbie's mom and Uncle Bill told us Dolly had been wonderful while we were away, and that she was always welcome to stay with them. Dolly clung to us, saying, "Don't leave me again for a long time," and we promised we wouldn't. Back at work on Monday, Deb and her team had narrowed down candidates for a new engineer position. They hired 2 top contenders, Betty Johnson, a sharp young assistant professor, and Jamal Washington, a well-qualified and personable engineer. A couple of months after our honeymoon, Deb sat Dolly and me down at the kitchen table. She held our hands and smiled, telling us she had news from the doctor. I immediately feared the worst, but Deb reassured me with a laugh. "We're going to have a new family member soon," she said. Dolly excitedly guessed we were getting a puppy, but Debbie smiled and told her she was going to have a little brother or sister. Overjoyed, I scooped Dolly into my arms, spinning her around the kitchen as we both cheered, "Mama's going to have a baby." Debbie watched, laughing through happy tears. We gathered around her, hugging and kissing, overwhelmed with love and joy. As I looked out the window trying to collect myself, the weight of becoming a father again hit me. I turned back, hugged Debbie, and whispered, "Thank you for this precious gift." Debbie's eyes, shining, whispered back, "This will be our child, a melding of the 2 of us." Dolly, ever curious, asked if we could get a puppy next time. Debbie laughed, explaining she was 2 months along and that it would be a while before she started to show. She then asked if I would attend birthing classes with her. "Of course," I said. "I'll go anywhere with you, my love." She rested her head on my chest, and we talked about the months ahead, 7 more months of waiting, and then we would welcome a new addition to our family. As I looked at the little girl in front of us, my mind raced with worry. How would Debbie's small frame handle carrying our baby? I was bigger than Jeff, Dolly's biological father. What if the baby was too big, or if she had twins? I hadn't thought about this before, and now I feared for her safety. Debbie noticed my concern. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked gently. I pulled her close and whispered my fears. She reassured me that women's bodies are built to handle larger babies, and that modern medicine would address any complications. "That's why I go for prenatal care," she said. "The doctor monitors everything. If necessary, they can induce labor or perform a C-section." I still wasn't completely convinced. "Not for you," I muttered, worried. Sensing the tension, Dolly asked, "What's wrong, Mommy? Why is Daddy crying?" Debbie smiled, brushing Dolly's hair. "Daddy's just being silly. He doesn't know how babies come out of Mommy's tummy. He's afraid it will hurt me." Dolly, with childlike innocence, said, "That's silly, Daddy. Mommy said it hurts a little, but mommies love their babies, so they don't mind." Debbie grinned at me, and we all hugged. Months passed, and Debbie's belly began to show. She was glowing, happier than ever, and said this pregnancy was better than her first because, this time, she wasn't alone. She had a loving husband, and everyone around her was supportive. One afternoon, Debbie, 7 months along, went to the bank while Dolly and I waited in the car. Suddenly, I heard gunshots. I grabbed my pistol and saw Debbie on the curb, exchanging fire with 3 men. 2 were down, and the car lurched toward her. I fired at the driver, and the car crashed into a tree. Panicking, I rushed to Debbie, relieved to find her unhurt. We barely had time to catch our breath before more shots rang out from inside the bank. I started toward the bank, but Debbie grabbed my arm. "I'm coming with you," she insisted. Together, we approached the shattered glass doors. Inside, a man held a woman hostage. I took a shot, knocking him in the head, and he dropped. As I moved to check on the woman, another robber rose from behind a desk. Debbie fired 2 quick shots, taking him down. After the police arrived, we handed over our weapons and were praised for saving lives. Debbie, calm but shaken, joked about ruining her pantyhose and purse. We headed home, exhausted and overwhelmed by the day's events. Later, we saw ourselves on the news as the heroic husband and wife team who stopped the robbery. The reality of the situation hit us hard, and we both cried, realizing how close we had come to losing each other. The sheriff visited us the next morning to review security footage that captured everything. Watching it unfold again was surreal. Debbie had been calm and precise, taking down 2 of the robbers without missing a shot. The sheriff was amazed and praised her skills, saying, "Not many deputies could have done what you did." He invited us to a press conference, and though we were exhausted, we agreed. Debbie blushed at the attention, but humbly said, "I was just doing what I had to do." The sheriff smiled. "Well, you did it perfectly. You two make quite the team." The following months were a whirlwind of media attention. Debbie was flooded with offers for interviews, talk shows, and product endorsements, from hair products to diapers. I had to step in to ensure she wasn't overwhelmed, limiting her activities, especially as her due date approached. I restricted any plans for the week before and 3 weeks after the baby was born, even limiting her communication to just family and close friends. Despite my efforts, Debbie insisted on working right up until she went into labor. She continued managing her work, though I had her hold meetings in her office instead of walking around. Jamal Washington was always her first appointment in the mornings, which started to irritate me. One day she mentioned visiting a few offices and asked if I'd watch Johnny. I suggested she keep having her meetings in her office, but she looked confused. "I like to visit each office and see how things are going firsthand," she said. "Who do you see first?" I asked casually. "Jamal, of course," she replied. "Why doesn't he report to Marty or Betty?" I asked. She paused, thinking. "I'm not sure. That's just how it's been." "I don't like it," I said. "He should be reporting to his boss, not you." Debbie considered my words, then smiled. "I'll take care of it," she said. I was relieved. "Good. Keeps things in the proper chain of command, and no one will think he's getting special treatment." Debbie raised an eyebrow. "Including you?" "Yep," I said, smiling. Debbie playfully flipped me off and laughed. "Oh, stop it." Months later, we held our company's annual beach party at my property near Daytona. It was an adults-only event, so Dolly and Johnny stayed with Grandma. The party was a hit, but I noticed Jamal was always around Debbie, and it started bothering me. It seemed like she was avoiding me, and my frustration grew. Betty, who was helping with the food, noticed my mood. "What's wrong?" she asked. I sighed. "I need a walk to clear my head," I muttered. I wandered along the beach, my mind racing with doubts. Could Debbie be interested in Jamal? I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. After some time, I sat on a log, lost in thought, when I heard voices and saw Debbie approaching with Betty. "Are you just going to sit there until the water reaches you?" Debbie asked. "I don't know," I muttered, still staring at the ocean. Debbie knelt beside me. "Betty told me you were upset about Jamal and me. John, I love only you. There's nothing between Jamal and me, and there never will be. You're stuck with me forever." I looked at her, confused and hurt. "But you spend so much time with him. What am I supposed to think?" Debbie sighed. "I've been helping him through a rough time. He's in love with someone, and it's tearing him up, because they don't love him back." "Who is he in love with?" I asked. Debbie hesitated, then said softly, "You." I froze. "Me?" I asked, stunned. Debbie nodded. "Yes, John. He's admired you since he started working for us. He's not interested in me. He's been spending time with me to be near you. I was shocked. It all started to make sense, the way Jamal acted around me. But I had misread it completely. I feel like a fool, I admitted. Debbie squeezed my hand. Don't. It's normal to feel the way you did. But now you know the truth. So what do we do now? I asked. Debbie thought for a moment. We'll talk to Jamal. He's done a great job, but he'll need to report to Marty or Betty from now on. It will keep everything clear. I nodded, relieved. That sounds like the right plan, Debbie smiled. And you won't have to worry about me spending too much time with him anymore. I chuckled. Thank God for that. We returned to the party where Betty was waiting. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, better than ever, I said. Debbie grinned. We've sorted everything out. Jamal will report to Marty from now on. Betty smiled. That's good to hear. Later, after the party, Debbie and I sat together at home. This made me realize something, she said. What? I asked. I need to be better at communicating with you. I should have told you about Jamal sooner. I kissed her head. And I should have spoken up instead of letting it bother me. She smiled. We've learned now. Yes, we're in this together, I agreed. That night, as we went to bed, I held her close, grateful for the love and trust we shared. Everything was back where it needed to be.